the way it all fits together, the way it all works, etc., etc. So I've been doing these Hughes at 10 episodes every day over the lockdown period, the second lockdown period. And now I am decided to do this during the day because I think my girlfriend was getting a bit annoyed with me spending so much time taking up the couch and talking to people online. I've got a message from Laura Worthington who says, I am here. Hello, Laura. Well, that's good. I don't think I'm connected to YouTube because otherwise I'm sure YouTube would have come up. So if you will indulge me for a moment, I'm just going to see what's going on with my live stream coming on on YouTube, because it'll be really good because I want to talk about a lot of stuff. I want to talk about Brexit. I want to talk, oh, here we go, live now. Multi-streaming with, this is excellent. Oh, good. So this seems to be working, I think. Connects streaming software. There we go. Excellent connection. And there's a live chat as well. Is this going out live? Can anyone hear me on YouTube? If you're there, please say hello. I'm going to just write hello in the comments here. Maybe that'll go to someone. I don't know. I don't know how any of this stuff works. I'm assuming this is actually going out. It doesn't say whether it is or not. Live television, isn't it great? Oh, hang on, I've forgotten to turn the lights on. Oh, well, never mind. You can still see me, can't you? Anyway, so, today I was going to talk a little bit about, first of all, let's just talk a little bit about Mayor Judy Garland of America, who is the old mayor of New York, and he used to come across as quite sensible. I think in 2001 he was Time magazine like Man of the Year or something, or Person of the Year. But then since then, he's gone completely cock-a-hoop insane. And basically, he sold his soul to reality TV or something like that. And then he realized he was sort of fading away into insignificance. So what he did was he got himself on board the Trump train and the Trump crazy train. And now he's driving that train all over the country with COVID-19. Yes, he has been diagnosed with COVID-19 and he's currently in hospital. And I always thought he would dye his hair in jail, but it looks like there's a good chance he might dye his hair in hospital, because he does dye his hair. And that's all I'm saying about that. But absolute fruitcake. Brought 50 cases. I think it's 50. It's either 40 or 50 cases about voter fraud. Absolute nonsense, and to various courts around the land in Wisconsin and Michigan and in Georgia, and they all got thrown out. I think one of them got upheld, and it was just that they didn't count some ballots that came in late, but it didn't matter because Biden still won whether they counted them or not. Trump still hasn't conceded, and now his right-hand man is hospitalized with the most deadly disease currently in the world. And but I'm sure he'll get the vaccine or something. Oh, it doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work once you've got it. It doesn't cure you. But what's really interesting is when people say, I don't know about this vaccine, I'm like, for heaven's sake. Seriously? Right? This has been the worst year. This has been the worst year. This is even worse than 2016. I know, okay, I suppose in 2016 we did lose Prince, George Michael, Princess Leia, and David Bowie all in one year, and Alan Rickman, and about a million other people. This year has not been quite as catastrophic when it comes to celebrity deaths. Someone quickly wrapped Sir David Attenborough up in cotton wool, etc. But we have lost Darth Vader, we lost Dave Prowse. We've also lost Spartacus, we lost Kurt Russell, although to be fair, he was like a zillion years old. But it's not the same sort of impact as losing like Prince. And then George Michael on Christmas Day. Oh my, and then Carrie Fisher and her mum within days of each other. What the Anyway, that was 2016. 2020's turned out to be even worse. We've had over 1.5 million deaths around the world. 1.5 million deaths! I mean, for God's sake, what? And people are going, I don't know about this vaccine. It's been rushed through. It hasn't been rushed through. Can I make this really clear? The underlying technology, which was developed by a couple of Turkish people who live in Germany with American money, but Britain, they've been doing their research into this type of vaccination since 2008. So that's 12 years of development. And what it is, just to simplify it to my stupid kind of non-scientific brain, from what I understand, they've basically made it reminds me of like in the war, right? They, because British people are obsessed with the war, obviously. We used to have inflatable tanks. And what it was the bombers, the German bombers would come over and they'll see these tanks down on the ground and so they'll drop loads of bombs on them. But they weren't really tanks, they were just cardboard cutouts, all inflatable. So this is an inflatable little bit of a bubble, let's say, or a football, and then they've put all the nodules on the outside to make it look like the coronavirus. And so when it's injected into you, your body goes, oh, what's this? I'm going to get rid of this. And it learns the shape of it. And therefore, it gives you immunization for up to, I don't know, 6 months, a year. I don't know. The point being, it's like the technology has been around for a while. They have obviously had loads of money pumped into it over the last sort of 9 months in order to get this vaccine going. And there's been no side effects so far on anyone who's been trialed with it. And I would be one of the people who would be happy to be trialed with it because I just want this. Sorry, I'm not going to swear. I just want this nightmare to be over. That's all. So, yeah. Oh, I've got messages. This is brilliant. Okay, I haven't started about Brexit yet. I will in a moment. I've got Marilena. Hello. I've got Tempest Travel Time. Hello there. Laura again. Hi, Laura. Different name on this one, Laura. Alex Green. I've got Rod Zamora. I've got Bayberg. Bloody hell. It's like a blue version of the Beeb. Ohio. Yay, connected, which is all good. What's really weird, though, is that the image of me on my screen down here is like a couple of seconds. There's a bit of a lag on it. So I'm like moving around like this, and then I stop, and then I can see myself on the screen, and I'm still moving around a bit. We've also got Ing there. Hello, Ingy. Got Marilena, like I said. Ulrika, hi. How's it going? We've got Minty Sillery. Hi, Elizabeth. How you doing? Got Andrew Lupton. And yeah, we've got people on Facebook watching, we've got people on Twitter watching, and we've got people on YouTube watching. This is really good. Luke Conley saying hi. Too Much 77 is saying hi. Minty saying no swearing. I'm not going to swear because it's before the watershed. Before the watershed. But I do want to swear. I do want to swear from the very tops of the treetops, the hillsides, the rooftops. That's the one, like a chimney sweep in Mary Poppins. Because, by the way, I just want to say thank you to all my wonderful Patreon supporters who paid for this brand new studio hovering 440 feet above the skyline of Liverpool. It's remarkable. Thank you for building this for me. I owe you. I massively owe you. And this definitely isn't a green screen. This is real. But yeah, what's also real is the fact that we are heading into the realms of, let's call it Schrodinger's deal. That's what we should call it, because there's a thing in physics, right? In quantum mechanics, I guess, called Schrodinger's cat. And the idea is there's an experiment, a thought experiment about a cat in a box, and its life depends on the fluctuation of a quantum atom or something. Right, not a scientist, remember, not a scientist. This cat, its life, its life is based on whether this atom fluctuate one way or fluctuate another, a molecule, whatever. Essentially, that cat, for the sake, for all wants and purposes, is dead and alive at the same time. And this is what we've got at the moment. We've got a Schrodinger's cat of a deal. At the same time, that no deal is a wonderful thing that will liberate Britain from the tyranny of the EU, we're also being told that it's a terrible thing that will result in our children going hungry next year because of all the food shortages. And that's the fault of the Remainers. And I'm like, okay, right. Let's just take this at face value. Let's say it is the fault of the Remainers. It's my fault, your fault, people watching this. It's all of our faults. We have messed up, because we were doing really, really well. And then the Remainers said we shouldn't have voted to leave the EU. It was a really bad idea. And by saying that, we made no deal inevitable. The problem with that theory is that it means that no deal is a bad thing. If no deal is a good thing, then we should be given knighthoods, we should be given gongs, we should be given our name in the New Year's honours. Graham Hughes, he sat down in his basement and he told people that leaving the EU would be a bad idea, and as a result of that, we got the best possible Brexit we could ever possibly get, which is a no-deal Brexit. Now, the result of a no deal and the result of an actual watered down wafa fin deal are quite similar, actually. They both hinge on this idea that we are going to put up boundaries to stuff coming into our country and stuff going out of our country. We're going to put obstacles in the way. Which seems like a daft thing to do because Britain, for the last 240 years, has been a bastion of promoting free trade with itself and its at one time dominions, later colonies, now the Commonwealth, and latterly the EU. Free trade has been something that Britain has pushed like nowhere else on earth. And it's been great for Britain because it's meant now if we want to buy something, we don't have to pay a massive tariff on it to our government. And if we want to sell something, we can sell it to another country and not get undercut by another country that can make exactly the same thing, but they don't pay as much tariffs as we do. Okay, so obviously China can make commodities cheaper than we can because the workforce is cheaper, but then they might not have the same skills that we do in, I don't know, the service industry, which is all we're seen to be good for now. So the customs union and the single market were basically the powerhouse. They were the powerhouse behind Britain's economic success over the last 40 years. I mean, as long as I've been alive, the EU and before then the EEC I've been a member of. And as a result of that, and after the Maastricht Treaty of 1992, I've been able to go and live and work and get married and retire and buy a house and do all that kind of stuff in 27 other countries, actually 31 other countries, but at least 27 other countries without having to ask anyone's permission. Now I'll have to ask permission. And as someone who has travelled to all these places around the world, let me tell you, if you have no money, they don't want you. And the thing is that only about 10% of this country actually have enough money to up sticks and live in another country because it's really expensive and you can't access the same channels of support that you can get in the UK. Health being an obvious example. Now, when we were part of the EU, and even if we get a deal or not, we're not going to be part of the EHIC anymore, right? So what the EHIC basically was you get the same kind of medical treatment that you would get at home if you're in any of the other countries of the EU. That won't exist anymore. We've left. Whether we get a deal or not, the EHIC card goes out the window. What does that mean? Well, first of all, if you're planning on retiring into another country, then you're going to have to pay into the health service in that other country from scratch. It's none of this, oh, well, I paid into the health service in Britain for 50 years, so why am I paying for it in Spain? It's not going to cut the mustard. You're going to have to get insurance to cover you. And the thing with insurance companies is they are not, they're not there to be nice, you know, they're there to make money. They're there to make money out of you and me and everybody, because that's what they do. They just make money. And so the idea that the people who want this the most, want Brexit the most, because they want to be liberated from the EU, most of them are going to be put at a disadvantage by us leaving the EU. It's not just going to be moving abroad, working abroad, because maybe they're retired. They won't be able to retire abroad anymore because they won't be able to cover the insurance costs. They might not be able to draw their pension while they're in another country from their British bank account. There's all these problems that people, like myself, have been going on about for the last 4 bloody years. And now finally, the government is going, oh yeah, this is going to be terrible, isn't it? Well, you know what? If you hadn't said anything, if you just kept quiet, it would have been fine. We would have got this great deal and we would have got everything that we had in the EU without being part of the EU. And the problem is, once you're out of the EU and the single market and the customs union, there's slim pickings. So what are we sacrificing? Our national integrity, our decency, our honour, our commitment to human rights? What are we sacrificing it all for? Sorry, our children's food next year, because I hate to break this to you, but 80% of our food is imported. Because it's not just the food that we eat direct, it's also the ingredients for the food that we eat as well. And of all the food, 80% is imported. So if it's stuck at a port, it's a perishable item. So a few days difference could mean the difference between you getting fresh fruit and veg and you not having fresh fruit and veg. Watch the levels of scurvy go sky high next year, although I'm sure some enterprising vitamin salesman will be able to make a small fortune out of selling people vitamin C tablets that they wouldn't have needed if they could just have access to oranges, which unfortunately don't grow in abundance in the United Kingdom. That's another thing that I need to sort of stress. The devastation to the countryside is going to be massive. We're not just talking about the farmers going out of business, and farming, along with, I don't know, being a vet, is one of the professions, one of the highest suicide rates in this country is farming. And people go on about lockdown and how it's affecting people's mental health. Yeah. Try explain to a farmer who's worked all their life on their farm that they're not going to get any subsidies anymore, when the average farm that makes a profit makes about £6,000. That's without paying the farmer. If they're lucky, a lot of farms make minus 20 grand a year because we want cheap food. And so the way we get cheap food is we have these massive subsidies that are given to the farmers if they jump through enough hoops and do the right thing, by the Common Agricultural Policy. That is being taken away. That is being phased out. They are not going to get these subsidies anymore. So they are going to go out of business, or they're going to have to put their prices up loads, or both. But one of the things they'll also have to do is increase yields. And this is going to be devastating. Because you think that the car park in Kent, the Farage garage, as we like to call it, you think that's bad? You just wait until you look out the window, right, over the countryside as you're driving along in your car, and all you can see for miles are polytunnels, plastic. Because that's what's going to happen, because we're going to have more intensive farming processes. You're not going to see sheep lounging around in fields because we won't be able to spare the room for sheep. So if we do have sheep, they'll be indoors. They'll be raised in a barn, because then you can control the heat, you can control the light, like we do with chickens. The days of free range, oh my God, if you're into your non-sort of toxic food, not toxic, that's a bad way to put it, non-cruelly cultivated food, non-economic, environmentally damaging food, you're going to be in trouble, because everything that we eat, pretty much that's grown in the United Kingdom. If we're growing it in polytunnels, we're going to have to ship in bees. So basically you get a van full of bees and you drive them in and you open it up. I don't know why I'm laughing, it's not funny. And they go through the polytunnel and they pollinate all the things that are in the polytunnel, and then they get them out again. And to strict vegans, that's seen as cruel. So they won't be able to eat any crops that we make, pretty much. It's going to make it very, very difficult. I'm sure that if you're rich enough, if you're earning, £100,000 a year, it might not affect you as much, but it's going to affect your children. It's going to affect their opportunities. We saw last week, there was an advert for an acting role for an 11-year-old kid to play a young Prince William in a film. And it specifically said in the advert that no British children were allowed to apply, because unless they had citizenship of another country, they wouldn't be able to claim, the filmmakers wouldn't be able to claim the EU benefits that they're getting if they employ people who aren't from the EU. They've got a certain quota, obviously. Kirsten Stewart's not from the EU. But the point is that they put this in the advert, and I can see this happening in the future, because if you want to work in Europe, if I get a presenting gig in Cyprus, for instance, I will have to get the production company to get me a work permit. I'll also have to pay more tax on whatever I do in those countries, because there won't be a reciprocal agreement. There won't be anything. And so are they going to take me, or are they going to take someone who's just as handsome but Irish, speaks English with a better accent, arguably, and can do it without them having to go through a load of paperwork, having to buy a work permit, which they can say no. And this is an important thing, and this is what I found when I travel around the world. They can say no. And you know when you apply to go to a country and they say no, there's nothing you can do about it. And also, you've paid the money. And for somewhere like America or Saudi Arabia, you could be paying hundreds of pounds just to ask them, and they can say no. And by then, you could have been halfway to getting on board the flight. Makes no difference. They said no, you can't get in. I mean, they're more likely to say no to you working there because they obviously want to protect their own workers. So if you're doing a job that someone in their country can do, they're not going to want you. They might want us to do jobs that they don't want to do, like fruit picking, but God, I'd love to see that. So why aren't you promoting civil disobedience? We tried peaceful protest, ignored. That's from Joel Josephson. Yes, you're right. That's all I want to say about that for now. Maybe we can talk about it more in the new year when there's food shortages and people are really, really angry. And maybe then will be a really good time for me to point out to anyone who's listening that everyone who got us into this mess, every single one of them, went to private school. So, you know, I might point to what happened in 1789 in France and say, well, this neo-aristocracy, the rich people in this country, have basically well and truly screwed over the poor people, which is like everyone who's not rich, for a generation. What should we do about that? Should we just sit back and let it happen, or should we do something about it? So Joel, yeah, that's all I can say to your message about civil disobedience. Yeah, I might go a little bit further, but you know, in my secret location, hovering above Liverpool, but we will see. We'll see that. We've got Too Much 77 who mentioned, when are we going to see the oldies coming back from Spain and France? Yes, absolutely. That's going to absolutely happen. And it's going to be absolutely devastating for our NHS, which is not going to be able to cope with all these people with pre-existing health conditions coming back to the UK. And because of the wonders of medical science, meaning that there's a buttload of people who shouldn't be alive right now. And I'm not saying that in a kind of like Nazi eugenics kind of way. I just mean that if it wasn't for medical science being what it is, they would have died from appendicitis, childbirth, cancer perhaps, that they've been cured of or has gone into remission because of science. So there are a lot of people now coming back to the UK who are going to be in bad health for the stuff that we can't cure, which everyone's dying of now because we cured everything else. So let's take COVID out of the equation for a moment. The biggest killer in the UK is heart disease because you only get one heart, unlike the doctor from Doctor Who, which is a bit of a shame. And also the second one is now dementia. It's Alzheimer's, dementia. And this is something that we didn't have so much of in the past because people didn't live as long and they would have died. My dad, for instance, has dementia. He had a heart op 8 years ago. Now, if he hadn't had that heart op, he wouldn't still be with us right now, and he possibly wouldn't have dementia. But the sort of things that people are dying of now, so cancer, dementia, they cost a lot to treat because they are long-term problems. You're talking a lot of care that is needed over dementia patients, and then you've got people who have got cancer. Obviously, as everyone watching this knows, it costs a lot of money to treat cancer, whether it's radiotherapy, chemotherapy, whatever it is, or surgery. It's expensive stuff. And so the idea of millions of people coming back to the UK and using the NHS for stuff like this is going to be devastating for the NHS, but also, if my sound's cut off, let me know. But also, it's going to be quite devastating for not just the NHS, but for the rest of us, especially coming from this point of view of, okay, so what are the reasons why the zealots and the bigots and the racists and the xenophobes all kicked off? Thanks, Elizabeth. I've just got a thumbs up from Elizabeth. I hope you can still hear me. I just got a phone call and I'm using my phone as my mic. Oh, I got such a professional setup here. So one of the things that was made very clear by the likes of Farage and his privately educated mate, Aaron Banks, Andy Wigmore, that horrible little Richard Tice creep, all of that lot from the Brexit Party, was that the big problem with people from the EU coming to the UK is they were clogging up our NHS. And the reason it was taking so long to get an operation or so long to see the doctor wasn't because of chronic underfunding by the Tory austerity government of 2010 to 2015. No, that wasn't the problem. The problem was the EU, people coming over here. But the daft thing about this is most of the people coming over from the EU were kind of like between the ages of 18 and 50, which, medically speaking, you're the least likely to pop your clogs between those ages. You've made it out of childhood and you're not quite an old bugger quite just yet. Although I'm getting there. Yeah, I know. The unflushables, as Neil calls them. But yes, they really, really are. But they all said this is a big problem. This is a big problem. The NHS can't cope. The NHS can't cope. And now we are getting old people who have retired and were living happily in the Costa del Crime or wherever they were living, and they're going to come back to the UK. And what do you think is going to happen? You're not going to be able to see your doctor. You're not going to be able to go and get your routine, what is it called, operation, because the NHS is just going to be overwhelmed. And then, so we're going to have all these people coming back, and then you've got to also appreciate the fact that tens of thousands of healthcare professionals, doctors and nurses, and vets, actually. Vets is another thing that we probably should talk about at some point. But yeah, let's just stick with the NHS for now. They're going because they come from the EU. They were EU doctors, they were EU nurses, trained in some of the best universities, the medical institutions in the world. But we're going to have to get rid of them now, and we're going to have to replace them with people from other countries that aren't in Europe, which seems like a daft thing for a racist to want, but that's what they want, so that's what we're going to get. But we've also got this massive shortfall. We've got over 100,000 vacancies in the NHS right now. We have all these old people coming over. What do you think's going to happen? And this is what I always want to say on these things. It's like, what do you expect? What the hell were you expecting? Because the things that are happening now were so obvious from the start that they would create problems. Even having to show your phone, an app on your phone that had a little QR code to someone, and them scanning it and then making sure that it was okay for you to go through, which might add an extra minute, 1 minute, onto your time coming through the border, would have huge detrimental effects on border crossings and the flow of trade. Even just 1 minute, but it's going to be worse than that, because we're going to be using paper forms that haven't even been bloody made yet, an app that hasn't been made. They're going to be staying in lorry parks, the Farage garages, which haven't been built. None of the systems are in place. We haven't employed enough customs officials to be able to check things and be competent at doing what they do. We're not ready for this at all. And so we're heading to a shit deal or no deal. And either one means that Britain is finished. This is it. This is the end of Britain. And it's such a sad irony that the people who made this happen, and I'm not talking about the people at the top, I'm not talking about the privately educated, posh, double-barreled name bastards who, sorry, I'm not going to swear. I meant illegitimate children of Boris Johnson's. I'm not talking about those shysters, those con men and women, those scumbags. Now, I'm talking about the people who voted for leaving the EU. None of them, I don't think, voted to leave the EU because they hated this country. Maybe they did, but I don't think the vast majority, I got a 99.99999% voted because they thought it was the best thing for their country, and they love their country. And their vote has now been taken and used as an excuse to destroy the United Kingdom, because we are undemocratically pulling Scotland out of the EU against its will. We're taking the rights of Scottish children from them to go and live and work and do jobs and retire in 27 other countries without having to ask permission. We're taking those rights away. We're taking Scottish children's food away when it's all stuck at the British ports and it can't get in. We're an island nation. We can't afford to feed ourselves. Well, sorry, we can probably afford to feed ourselves, but we don't, because we like our countryside and we don't want polytunnels everywhere trying to feed everyone. Don't forget, in the war, when the population was only, 40 million, so it was a lot less than it is today, which is 66 million, we couldn't feed ourselves in the war. We were completely reliant on food coming in from around the world in order to keep British people fed. And that was back in the day when people only ate custard and spam and barbed wire. So, I mean, now it's even more a case of we are so independent in the world. The idea of standing on our own 2 feet is just, it's just childish and ridiculous. But my point is that the people who voted for Brexit are not generally the people who would want to see the end of Britain. But because of what we've done to the people of Scotland, they voted 62% to stay in the EU. They voted 62% for no food shortages. They voted 62% to keep Britain's status, place in the world, the respect that we had around the world. Don't they say that the respect arrives on foot, it leaves on horseback, or something like that, or jetpack maybe. And this is where we are. And as a result of that, as a direct result of the Brexit vote and the fact that Scotland voted to stay, Scotland now has one of the most valid reasons in the world to break away from the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom of England and Scotland, really. Wales is a principality. Northern Ireland is obviously a part of a province of Ireland. So that's it. No more Britain. No more British flag, Union Jack. Union, it's only a jack if it's flown from a jack staff. Yeah, all right, Mum. The Union flag, that's not going to be our flag anymore. Our country's not going to be called Great Britain, because Great Britain is the island. It's the whole island that we live on. And it's not going to be one country anymore. It will be like meeting someone from Dominican Republic or Haiti and then describing themselves as being Hispaniolan, because the island is called Hispaniola. No one cares about that, what the island's called. They just care about that little bit that they're from. And that's what's going to happen. And so, as Oscar Wilde once wrote, each man kills the thing he loves. And these people who love their country so much have loved it to death. And I can't see it lasting much more. After the trauma that's going to be January. I hope you've all stocked up, by the way. I hope everyone watching this has been doing some stockpiling, because you're going to need some things to get you through. I mean, fresh fruit and veg, you're stuffed. Just get some freezer space. I mean, I don't think that you should be going out and buying generators necessarily, but when I stayed in Nigeria, the electricity went off all the time, and everybody had their own portable generators just to bridge the gap between power integers, I guess. And so this was normal to them, and I hate to think that's going to be normal for us. Only 8% of our electricity is imported. Oh, it's still 8%. So hopefully we'll be all right. But if fuel is having difficulty getting in, and here's another thing where we're over a barrel. It'd be great if we had energy self-sufficiency. We should have gone for that years and years and years ago when the technology was first there, because we've got loads of wind, we've got loads of rain, we've got loads of solar, we've got loads of wave power, we've got loads of tidal power, we've got loads of ways of creating power on this island that don't require us to buy loads and loads of gas from Qatar. But unfortunately, for everyone who lives here, we basically live off gas from Qatar. And without that gas, you're not going to be able to heat your house unless you've got an electric boiler. And you might not be able to cook your food. Now, this gas comes in these massive container ships, which have 2 or 3 of these massive spheres on them. And in each of those spheres, inside is the gas, which is natural gas, which is cooled down, so it's liquid inside, or it might be frozen, but I think it's liquid inside. And obviously once that's popped out, it expands and you can light it and use it to heat your home, which nearly all of us in the United Kingdom do. So imagine you're on one of these ships and you're trying to get into a port in the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, in your berth is another ship, which is sitting there, and it's been sitting there for 7 days now doing paperwork. You can't bring your ship in unless that ship moves. But if they haven't filled out the paperwork properly, they might not be able to move. They might not be legally allowed to move that ship. It might have to stay there. And so the ship with all the power on, let's call gas what it is, it's power for people's homes, to generate electricity in our power stations. It's over 50% of our energy at the moment is generated from natural gas, a lot of which comes from Qatar. By the way, I think Qatar and China own our national grid, which should be a bit concerning to anyone who's well into loving their flag, let's put it that way. We've got a situation now where we are completely at the mercy of other countries, completely, for food, for energy, for anything. And we have picked the worst possible time in history to decide to disconnect ourselves from the rest of the world. But worse than that, we've picked the middle of a pandemic. Sorry to shout. The middle of a pandemic. The middle of a pandemic to shut down our ports, slow everything up, just throw a load of gunk into the works, which is exactly what the Luftwaffe were trying to do. They were trying to stop food coming into our country. The transatlantic convoys, where it was food and munitions coming over from North America across the Atlantic, and the Germans tried their level best to bomb the crap out of it because they knew that if they cut off the food supplies to the nation would shrivel and die. They didn't manage to do that. We beat them. I'm saying we, obviously just me and my mates. No, our ancestors and our grandparents and our great-grandparents defeated them. Thank you. Thank you to those people who did. The baby boomers didn't, by the way, just to have a little dig at the baby boomers while I'm here, while I've got your audience. Well then, dear Alex Green, lol. Any medication? Yes, sorry, that was the third thing, medication. So, fuel, food, medication. And according to the government's own reasonable risk assessment, reasonable, this isn't worst case, reasonable, we will see a reduction to 60 to 80% in our medicines coming into the country. 60 to 80% reduction. So if your medicines are part of the up to 40% that don't get into the country and you need them to stay alive, what are you going to do? Where'd you go? You can't go to just live in another country anymore. They won't allow you. They've taken that right away from you. They've taken that right away from you, and they've taken that right away from your children. So what do you do? What do I do? What does anybody do? What we need, basically, and what I hope these videos will start forming a cohesive whole at some point, will be giving this idea life that we can actually do something about this before the next election. Because we're going to have to. We can't go for 4 more years, 4 years with food shortages, medicine shortages and fuel shortages. We can't. And the logistics are going to be an absolute nightmare for the next. They say it should settle down after a few months because we'll settle into the new regime. Yeah. What they mean by that is after a few months, we'll get used to not being food in the supermarkets that we want to eat at any particular time of the year. We're going to have to go back to the days of seasonal fruit and veg, which would be fine if we knew we could get nice fruit and veg from this country. But like I said about oranges, we don't grow that many oranges. We're not big into grapes. I don't think we grow many pineapples here or coconuts or things that we just take for granted every day in this country. That's all going to have a lot more difficulty getting here. And there was someone on the radio this morning who phoned up and said, we'll make all this money out of the tariffs, which I don't think they understand the concept of tariffs. So let's just talk a little bit about what tariffs mean. It's as simple as this. So we go to World Trade Organization tariffs. They're not set by the World Trade Organization. The maximum limit is set by the WTO. So if you want to buy anything from anywhere, if you don't have a trade deal with them, you can basically charge whatever tariff you like on it. So if it's a commodity that you make in your country, you might want to slap a big tariff on it because you don't want to be undercut by this foreign country. You know, obviously bringing stuff in that you want to sell yourself to your own people. So you want to slap a massive tariff on it. But what the WTO says is, right, if you're a member of the WTO, and about 160 countries are, you can't you can't do that to excess. You can't slap a 500% tariff on a particular commodity. Depends what it is. In fact, in India, they do slap a 500% tariff on Scottish whiskey, but the WTO is quite careful to pick and choose commodities to say, look, you can put X amount. So on cars, it's 9.8%, for instance. On lamb, it's between 40 and 50%, depending on the cut. On beef, it goes up to 60%, or it goes up to 160% maximum tariff on frozen beef carcasses. And services, which make up 80% of the British economy, there is no top tariff. There's no maximum tariff. Now, you look at one of these commodities and you say, oh, we need some more of that. We need some more steel. We need some more fish. We need some more whatever. So what we'll do is we'll bring down the tariff for, let's say, South Africa to send us fish. Right, that's what we wanted to do. So instead of it being 40% tariff, we bring it down to 20% for South Africa. But that's not allowed unless we have a specific trade deal with South Africa. If we do it without a specific trade deal with South Africa, just because we want this stuff, I mean, we can make the tariff zero if we want. We also have to make it zero for all the other members of the WTO, including the EU, right? Because that's a member. We have to make it zero for everybody. It's called the most favored nation clause. So you're not allowed to give one nation favoritism over any other unless you've got a trade deal. So this is one of the big problems, that if we don't have a trade deal with the EU, we've got to give the rest of the world anything we give the EU. So say we are desperate for food and we say, okay, look, we're going to just zero the tariffs on beef, for instance. That means that suddenly American beef, Argentinian beef, Australian beef, all goes to zero tariff. So they will be flooding our market with their products as well. But then there's this thing about tariffs. This idea of making money out of tariffs is just so obnoxious and annoying. I just want to get this out before I go to some of your messages here. If you have a tariff set up, right, on any given thing coming into your country, that money doesn't go to the company that makes the thing, or the farmer that's grown the thing, or cultivated the thing. It goes to the government of the country we're in. So if I buy a frozen beef carcass from Argentina and I have to pay 160% tax on it, essentially, that's what the tariff is, it's a tax. That money goes to the British government. My money as a British citizen goes to the British government. Now, if we force other countries to slap tariffs on our products going out, which is absolute economic suicide, because just between you and me, there's hardly anything we make in this country that's unique, okay? There's hardly anything that we make in this country that can't be made somewhere else. Except maybe a Scottish whiskey, which if Scotland leaves, then I don't know what we've got. We've got some good books, but I think we've sold all them to Warner Brothers. So the idea that we're somehow going to make money from tariffs when we sell stuff, so I make, I make a phone somehow, it costs £17,000, and I sell that phone to someone in France, they will have to pay a whopping great tariff on that phone because we don't have a deal for zero tariffs. And they will pay, let's say £2,000. It's better for a car, actually. So I make a 20 grand car, 10%, they have to pay £2,000 on top of that tax. That money would go to the French government. Well, it actually goes to the EU, but they get redistributed. So let's say, let's give another example. Let's give America. Okay, so I sell a car to America and they pay 10% on that car. So they give £2,000 or the equivalent in dollars to the American government, not our government, not the person not me, who made the car. We don't get anything. All we have is a barrier to people buying our stuff because it's more expensive than buying the exact same product from a country that you've got a trade deal with. So when people go, it's not that bad when you have, whether you have no deal or a deal, it's going to be pretty much the same. It's going to be devastating either way, but a no deal is not just going to snag up our ports, which a deal is going to do anyway, because we're going to be checking everything coming in. We're not part of the single market. We're not part of the customs union anymore. We've left the richest and most successful trading union, most integrated and the most politically integrated trading system, trading union in the world, the European Union. We've left it. And we're moving to WTO rules, which if we do, it means that we have no say in what those rules are, because the WTO is made up of 164, I think maybe a few more now, but at least 164 countries around the world. Each one gets one vote. We don't vote for the person who represents us at the WTO. We don't get much of a say in it. And they're going to be the arbiters of deciding whether we've been fairly treated by other countries in the EU or countries in Africa or countries, Japan, North Korea, whoever we want to trade with. And this situation is absolutely, someone's put countryside. That's Adam has said countryside. It's a good way of putting it, like suicide, but countryside. Yeah, we have destroyed our own country. We have just decided on a whim to destroy it. And obviously I'm going to have to do another episode where I talk about this at length of how we ended up being where we are. But at the moment, not knowing what kind of deal we're going to have, not what it's going to, the shape of it, what's it's going to do for people in the United Kingdom, what it's going to do to our neighbours, is so reprehensible. It's so irresponsible to do this. We've only got 3 weeks left of the year, and they won't give us a straight answer of what's going to happen in 3 weeks' time. They're telling businesses to get prepared. They have a ticking clock. It sounds like a ticking bomb to me. Get ready. Well, what do you want us to do? It's like being on a plane and the plane's going down and they go, brace. Okay, I'll brace. But I mean, I can't stop the plane from going down. What do you want me to do? Well, we're just going to have to get ready, aren't you? Get ready. Just brace for impact. That's what those government ads should say. Brace for impact. Because whichever way you cut this, whether it is a wafer-thin deal or whether it's no deal, we are well and truly, word I can't say at 1 p.m. But it is just off the charts that we have got this far with the bunch of brigands and liars and thieves and pirates and cheats that are running this country. And nearly every single one of them, except for the horrible little graspy ones like Darren Grimes and Priti Patel and Dominic Raab, they're the little graspers. They're the little, they just kind of follow on to the rich person, following them along, bowing and saying, yeah, come on, I'll be part of this. I'll be part of this. And that they are arguably bigger traitors just because they weren't born into that class. But the people who were born into that class, the people who have foisted Brexit on us more than any other group in society. Forget about your educated and your uneducated. Forget about your young and your old and all that. The biggest division in Britain today is the people who went to private school and the people who didn't. And I guarantee you can give me all the names you like of the people who made Brexit a thing, and I'll just go and I'll point to the school they went to. And I bet you bottom dollar they're part of what I like to call the soggy biscuit club. Random Debris says, even with a trade deal, including cars, the car will never pass under the country of origin rules. No way 60% of the value of that car is from the UK. You don't have the means. Another thing that I haven't even touched on this yet, rules of origin. You see, the thing is, going to the moon sounds really, really simple. It sounds simple. Like, you just go to the moon. Let's just go to the moon. But actually, getting to the moon is bloody complicated and bloody dangerous and requires the finest minds of a generation to come together and work out all the mathematics behind it, work out the rocket fuel that you will need, work out the trajectories, work out absolutely everything, because for every action you make going to the moon, there's a million things that can go wrong and will result in the fiery death of 3 astronauts, which you never really want. Brexit's the same. The idea of leaving the European Union is the most complex thing that any government in history has ever embarked upon as a government. And the people we have in charge are the worst. They are idiots. They are incompetent. We have over 75,000 excess deaths this year from COVID, because of COVID-19, because of our government's cack-handed response to it. The fact that they didn't shut down the airports. They've been going on about foreigners coming to our country and we're not being able to control our borders. The one moment in history where I would have gone with them and said, yes, please close the borders. They didn't close them. They didn't close them at all. They told everyone in the UK to lock down. They didn't close the airports. They were still running. If you wanted to fly here, you could. No one was stopping people. That's absolutely abhorrent that we are in this situation. And yet, 37% of the population still think that the Tories are doing a damn good bang-up job. And if this is a good job, I'd hate to see a bad job. Oh my God. Maybe if they mishandled a pandemic and tens of thousands of British people died, and then they decided to put food, fuel and medicine shortages on top of all that, yeah. Oh, actually, no, that's what they're doing. But there's a good portion of the British population who think this is a good thing. So I've said this before. I don't want there to be no deal. I don't want there to be a bad deal. I'd love there to be a really good deal. I would have liked us to stay in the customs union and the single market. If we have to leave, then I don't want it to be absolutely devastating. There's a part of me that thinks, actually, people need to see how devastating it is, because then we'll get back into the EU faster. But as I keep stressing, my family and friends live here. I live here. My stepdaughters live here. So the idea that I'm going to just go, oh, well, you know, we'll have it really, really horrible for a year where loads of people will die because they won't get their medicine, they won't get the medical treatment. The homelessness rate's going to go up because you're going to have loads of people who have a house in the UK but live in Spain, right? They're going to have to come back to the UK, and the people who are renting their house are going to be kicked out because it's not their house. And so we're going to see the strain on the housing market is going to get even worse. We're already seeing jobs going from the Arcadia Group, from not Selfridges, Debenhams. Oh my God, the number of people who have lost their jobs in the last week is more than the number of people employed in fishing in the United Kingdom. Fishing, which is 0.1% of our GDP. It might even be 0.01% of our GDP. It is a tiny, tiny fraction. And yet, for some reason, this is the hill that Britain wishes to die on. This is the most important thing to British people, that we have our fish. And there was a guy on the radio this morning, an old chap, who was in the RAF, and he liked watching the fishing flotillas going out into the waters. And I guess he liked that because he was watching it from a plane. And the sad reality is that if you are a fisher person, you have to be a man, could be a woman, it's not the best job. It's not the best job. It's like round here in Durham, going down. Oh no, I look like I'm in Liverpool, but I'm actually in Durham. It's just a green screen. The idea that you send people down the mines at the age of 18, and then they die at the age of 41 from black lung, and their children go down the mine at the age of 18. They don't see daylight for most of the days of the week. For the whole of their adult life is a shit way to live. And I get that people around here didn't want the mines to close down. But for the quality of human life, it's not a great job. Fishing is very, very dangerous. You're going out into stormy waters. Anyone who's seen A Perfect Storm will be able to relate to this. It's a dangerous business. It's a hard business. And to be honest with you, if some people want to do it who are from another country, I don't really have a massive problem with it. I've got no impulse to think, oh, the coal I buy has to be dug out by a British person. That the fish I buy has to be caught by a British person. I don't really care. My laptop's not made by a British person. My phone's not made by a British person. This microphone's not made by a British person. We can do other stuff, can't we? We're not a developing nation. We're not a developing nation that relies on its natural resources because we haven't got much left. And we're not a developing nation that relies on fishing to keep it going. Like, goddamn, I don't know, Senegal or Somalia or somewhere. What? Fishing! And yet, this is where we are. The other thing is the level playing field, which is just basically making it fair so the British government can't give loads of money to a British company to prop it up so it can make basically the same stuff they make in Europe, but a lot cheaper because they don't have to make so much of a profit because they get loads of money off the government. And of all the governments to be complaining about that, it's the Tory government that just lets most businesses die. That's quite happy to see any business, apart from the arms industry, obviously. But yeah, any physical business, that physical industry, steel, British Leyland, just let it die, just let it die, just let it die. They don't care. They don't care. But suddenly, oh no, it's really important that we have this that we're able to subsidise these failing companies to the nth degree, and therefore that they can continue to trade and undercut our European neighbours. The only thing with this is that is even more maddening than it being the Conservative Party who have got to be in the bonnet about it, is the fact that the trade deal that we just signed with Japan a couple of months ago also has a stipulation about state aid, and it's actually more stringent than what the Europeans are asking for. So, fish, bullshit stuff about state aid, and what have we got left? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So, sorry for not looking at your messages as much. I'm still finding my feet on this. Thank you so much for writing in. I've got Kevin Hegarty here. I've got Too Much 77. I've got Min in Malta. Hi, Min. We've got Super Krabby Crab. We've got Gene T saying, keep up your good work. Oh, no, just work. Okay. Keep up your work. Work. You get a job. Experience Scotland differently is saying, as much as I admire that handful of Brits like you, I cannot wait for this country to finally feel all the pain you have done to everybody else. Yeah. Well, this is the British flag was called the butcher's apron in a lot of countries around the world, and yes, I get that. I get that. The for each lie that's told, it incurs a debt to the truth, and sooner or later that debt is paid. Well, you hear those ticking clocks on the government adverts counting down to Brexit. Yeah, that's going to be our debt being paid. But I don't want my family and friends to have to live through this. I just don't. I can't believe that it's 2020 and we're stockpiling. We're stockpiling in 2020. There is no war. We're not being attacked in the sky. There are no bombs raining down on us or people trying to invade with guns to kill us dead. We were trucking along quite nicely. But then Farage, Johnson, Gove, Cummings, Aaron Banks, millionaires and billionaires born into unfathomable wealth who managed to hoodwink this country into believing that they were the victims. The rich were the victims. If only we could get out the EU and their pesky, tax avoidance laws, then we would be better. But we're not going to be better. And I like to think now, if we do get no deal and people blame it on people like me, people like Femi, people like Mike Galsworthy, Drew Galdron, Maddie. Yeah, it was us. we gave you the no deal that you absolutely massively wanted this time last year. It's because of us that we got to say thank you. Say thank you for us destroying your country, because that's what you wanted. And so here we are. I have friends and family in the UK. I'm so frightened for them. This is from Min. Yeah, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. The domesticated ape says the fishing thing feels like it's there to muddy the waters. The level playing field is the real issue for the Tories. Yeah, but that's not as sellable. Anyone in Britain who has a picture of a fish on their a picture of themselves holding a fish on YouTube, on Facebook, they go for the fishing line, because it's the last British industry that they can envision. The stuff that we do, the services we provide, the video games industry, which is massive in the UK. That the pornography industry in the UK is bigger than the fishing industry. But that's not a talisman. That's not something to hold up. Grand Theft Auto is a British game. You know Grand Theft Auto? The games that sell tens of millions of copies around the world? Yeah, British game. Actually Scottish. DMA Design became Rockstar. DMA Design, you might recognise that name from anyone who's my age, who played Lemmings as a kid. Yes, it's made by the same people who made Lemmings. We also have Rare, and we had Team 17 back in the day. There's loads of British software developers and loads of software development going on in the UK. There's a huge Sony place in Liverpool. But whether that's going to survive or not, it's up to question. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, because why would you want to continue to invest in a country that has gone through great pains to put obstacles to trade up? So it's more difficult for you to sell stuff to that country. It's more difficult for you to buy stuff from that country in terms of time and in terms of cost. And we've done this to ourselves. We were the 5th richest country in the world. The 5th. What more did we frickin' well want? And for the record, the 4 countries that were richer than us, Germany, Japan, America, and China, have all got bigger populations. And yet, it wasn't enough for Britain. It wasn't enough. And this is going to be a cruel and very dispiriting life lesson. And I don't have the same qualms, that's the word. I don't have the same qualms as James O'Brien in saying, I told you so. But I know that everyone watching this probably knows that I told them so. And they probably agreed with me back then and probably still agree with me now. We wanted to be special. Oh, so special. That's some sugar-free. So, great. I think you've been able to see me, this whole thing. I think you've been able to hear me. I don't know if my video's been any good or my sound's been out of sync or whatever, but I'm going to check. I'm going to check on it afterwards. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me in my initial and very discombobulated edition of HughesRound. I hope this all worked, and thank you for taking the time out to join me. I'll be back again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Try and be on the dot today. I was a minute late today, but tomorrow I'll try and be absolutely on the dot. But I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's watched this, everyone who's contributed a comment. Kevin said, I've taken a late lunch to watch you today. Shh. Okay, Kevin, I'll try and be more succinct tomorrow because I've definitely gone over the 2 o'clock limit. So tomorrow it should be 1 hour from 1 o'clock. So please tune in again, and I'll get down to more of your messages tomorrow, I promise you. Right, now I have to suss out how to stop recording. I don't really know how to do this. So professional. I should hire a producer, shouldn't I? A producer? Producer. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Until next time, hello, good evening.